Okay, so I want to briefly demonstrate how to use this color mixing chart. You can use colored pencil, watercolor paint, and if you don't have either of those, you can definitely still use crayon. So what you're gonna do is just follow the directions on the page. So, you know, this says just to fill it in with orange, and so you'll fill it in. You'll fill it in nicer than I'm filling it in because you'll have more time and it won't be a demonstration. And so you'll do that for every color on both sides. So you see on this side right here, it says green, yellow, orange. So you're gonna do that all across and all the way down. Now, when you get to the inner circles or ovals, it's asking you to blend orange and yellow. And so then what I would do, and this is, you're using Crayola or color pencil, is just go in with layers. And so see, you're still achieving, even though it's just a Crayola, you're still achieving a different hue of this yellow and this orange. So mixing these two make this. So then it's asking for green and orange. So for this one, let's go ahead and just use the color pencil just as an example. So we'll just go ahead and put down, I kind of like to use the dark color first. And you notice I'm not pressing dark, I'm pressing in fairly lightly. And for just blending's sake, I'm gonna go in the opposite direction. And so that's an example of the green and orange. Let's try blue and orange. So let me make sure that's the right color. And of course, there's different variations of blue. There's different variations of red and all of that. Try to stick to the one that is the primary blue, the primary red. So now what's gonna happen here is this kind of turns into like a brown color, because if you noticed and remember on the video, complementary colors make brown. So if you are wanting to make a brown that's just not the boring kind of brown like that's out of the package, you can actually make your own, and it's preferred to do that, especially when you're painting. So speaking of painting, one of the medium options is watercolor. And because we haven't done like a demo on how to paint or anything like that, I wanted to just briefly kind of show you some tips about watercolor. You usually want to start with a wet brush. Now the thing with watercolor is the more water you add, the lighter the color, the less pigment you're gonna have. The less water, the more pigment. But what you don't want to do is just use very little water just so you can get super bold colors. You're definitely going to want to find a balance between how much water. That's not enough. So see, that's pretty dark. That's a little darker. When it starts to get that dark, it's looking more like an acrylic than a watercolor. So it's okay to pull the water up in the tray if you want. And normally you see these things right here, even like the Crayola trays have them. This is actually your mixing palette. So if you wanted to mix colors, you can mix them in there. So yeah, so then let's look. Now that I've added more water, you see how it's more of like a watercolor now. And when it gets wet like that, that's when it's really easy to go in and then blend another color with it. Now, obviously, this is not painting paper or like watercolor paper. So it's gonna work a little better if you're using a mixed media paper or watercolor paper. So now with this, if you can't print it out, that's totally fine. You can kind of just make your own chart out of your sketchbook. So, all right, so let's get back. Let's do yellow and green right here. So again, I'm gonna start with the darker color. And then when you clean your brushes, don't like just stab it like that. Here, don't do this. You really just almost kind of need to stroke inside the water to kind of get the pigment off. Don't ever just leave your brushes in water either. Don't leave them bristle side down in a dry cup to let them dry. Always do bristle side up. And don't try to hold the brush like how you would write with like a pencil or something like that. You usually want to have it a little further up or even here on the cushions. And again, light and loose, don't go in with too much pressure. So we're going to start with the green first. Okay, I can put in a little more pigment there. And then yellow. You might have to work fairly quick if you're just using printer paper, because it's gonna just really just absorb it. Okay, so let's do blue and yellow, which if we know our basic color theory, we know that we're gonna get green. And you'll have to make sure the last color that you just used is off your brush, and because then it'll affect it. All right, so we have our green. You can mix your media if you want. So this is blue and orange. So to speed up the drying process on this one, I'm gonna pick up some of the moisture and then mix my orange on it. You'll definitely have to wait for it to dry, I guess, if you want to mix your medium. Again, these are two complements, so it's going to make like a brown color. I'm going to go in a little more with that blue pigment because I picked a lot of it up. And now I put too much. But you get the idea. So if you're wanting to mix your mediums, you can. The whole idea of this is just to practice to get different types of values and colors, because with this next project, it is very color heavy, and I want you to be able to really unlimit yourself when it comes to what your color palette is. You might only have a crayon box of 24 or 12, or you might only have color pencils of like 10. And so you'll want to extend that by learning how to mix and blend. Now, some of y'all struggled, let's just fold this a bit, with your color pencil. And I showed you a demo if you're in class, and if you are not in class, you missed that. It was on the Zoom, I believe. So if I'm trying to color in something, and let's say it's gonna be blue, don't just leave it at that. Like, find a way to just really make that blue more interesting. If you want darker values, if you want it to go from dark to light, don't just depend on black or brown. The black is just really gonna muddy it, and that's really difficult to compete with visually with the other elements. So you might be thinking, okay, Ms. Rodriguez, I don't like that color. That's not blue anymore. That's like a yuck color. Well, so then you just go back over Now, do you see how much nicer that blue is? How richer it is? And then small strokes. If you are covering a big area, these big crazy strokes you might think is making you work quicker. It's really not. It's really better for you to keep the strokes short and uniform. You're going to get much better coverage. The more pigment you have here, the easier it's going to be for you to blend and layer your colors. Now you notice I'm kind of going in different directions. Be careful with that. It's something that you can do if you are patient enough to make sure you're getting all of the areas. It's just one way for me to get even color. You can apply more pressure as you need. And so see, now I'm applying a lot more pressure. So now this is a very rich violet color. Now if I just used regular violet, you might think, well, Ms. Rodriguez, that's a pretty color. But here's the deal, it is a pretty color, but look how much richer this is. And this shows that you took more time to build and develop that color. And sometimes when you use colors just straight out of the box or straight out of the palette, it'll start to kind of look cartoony. And if that's not what you're going for, if you're trying to make something look more rich and more sophisticated, then you're gonna want to layer those colors. So I hope this helped you understand how to do your color mixing chart and just get some easier tips on how to use these mediums. Whatever I showed you with the color pencil, the same thing applies to the crayon. Because they're waxier, it's not gonna be the same exact effect, but you can still get good effects with it.